Are you crazy? That was my attorney, Donald Jenkins. They literally have an airtight case. There are probably a dozen witnesses, including your wife, not to mention very clear video from not one, not two, but three separate security cameras, and all in the damn daily. Your fingerprints and DNA were found on the weapon you used. Your motive is very well documented, and that's not to mention that the police caught you at the scene and their cameras showed you assaulting him. Yep, all very well said. I could see why he thought I might be crazy to turn down the plea bargain I was offered. I would plead guilty and get 5 years with probation for another 5 years, or I would be found guilty at trial, and the judge could sentence me to 15, 20 years. On the other hand, if I were a normal, reasonable person, I might not be in this situation. For one thing, it would have been better if I hadn't committed the crime, or if I had, I would have been a lot smarter and at least tried to cover my tracks. No, I did it, and I didn't care who found out about it. Listen, you hired me to represent and advise you. I'm telling you that you don't stand a chance in court. The DA is only offering this deal because there is a backlog of cases in court. By giving you this deal, you will be spared the unnecessary expense and time of a trial. My best advice is to take the deal. You will not walk away from it. No lawyer in the world can get you out of it. I can't even argue against it. If this goes to trial, all I can do is sit next to you and watch the prosecutor crucify you. I won't even have an argument to make. Once the prosecution settles down, I'll settle down too. I won't even be able to call a single witness to defend you. You're finished. The only thing you can do is to mitigate this disaster as much as possible by serving as little time as possible. Going to court will cost you a hell of a lot of money, only making things worse for yourself. So, counselor, when is the trial? How long will it last? And how long after that before sentencing? I asked. His eyes sort of glazed over as he tried to come to terms with the fact that I just didn't care. Because of the backlog in the case, the trial will be in about 6 months. Before that, there will be arraignment hearings, evidentiary hearings, I'll have motions to be heard, the prosecutor will file motions, and a few other things. All I can do is try to delay the trial, but that won't change anything. Fine, you need to call my sister and let her know what my bail will be. She'll bail me out. It won't be cheap. Not your problem. Also send her your bills. She'll take care of them. He walked away. I'm sure he was thinking about getting a psychiatric evaluation. Maybe he could get me an insanity defense. I was fine with that. I didn't mind paying him more money for doing the best he could, not that it mattered. You're probably wondering what's going on. Let me go back a couple months. So, my name is Dan Malloy. I am 56 years old and I live with my beautiful and loving wife, Kimberly. We have been married for 25 years and we have two wonderful daughters, Gina and Susan. Gina is 22 years old and is in college. Like me, she is studying mechanical engineering. Sue is 20 years old and is studying business administration. They plan to take over my firm when I retire. It is a small firm and we are by no means rich, but we are quite comfortable. We have our own house, we still pay for it, but only have a few years left. We drive decent cars, even if not the most luxurious. I've made sure to set aside enough money in investment accounts to retire well when I turn 65. Kimberly has been a stay-at-home mom since Gina was born. When both children went to school, she began volunteering at various charitable organizations so she could get out of the house while the girls were in school. When Sue left for college, her volunteer hours increased to compensate for the empty family. I didn't mind this and even encouraged her. It made her happy and also allowed us to attend a few more evening events. Kim and I had an amazing life as we dated, got engaged, and then married. Having kids slowed our life down a bit, but it was still pretty frequent and exciting. As the kids grew up, our responsibilities increased, and we got older, things became less exciting and less frequent. Still, we did it probably 2 or 3 times a week. No, it wasn't as adventurous as when we were younger, and it was pretty predictable. It all came crashing down on a bright fall morning. I had been to the doctor the week before to have some tests done. I had been feeling wrecked and somehow unimportant for quite some time. It seemed like I was tired all the time. Kim noticed this and hounded me until I gave up and made an appointment. I was mortified when I walked out of the office. The test results were in. I decided that I was not going back to the office that day. I needed somewhere to go and think. I needed to make plans and decisions. I also needed to think about what I would tell my wife and daughters. I was heading to a small sports bar that I liked to eat a hamburger and drink some alcohol while I mulled over the news. I was standing at a stoplight at a local college when I noticed my wife's car pulling out of it. This was not unexpected. One of her volunteer activities was tutoring at the college. She had earned a degree in English before we were married and had always loved literature. When she had free time, she tutored some students on campus. What was amazing was that she wasn't alone. Moreover, she wasn't even driving. Kim was sitting in the passenger seat, and some young and very large black guy was behind the wheel. I was 2 cars behind them, and they didn't notice me. Even from the quick glance I got, it was obvious that Kim was focused on the kid who was driving. It all seemed wrong. Since they had turned onto the road in front of me and in the same direction, I decided to follow them. I made sure there were at least 2 cars between us, but that didn't matter. 5 minutes later, I watched them pull up to an inexpensive motel. When they turned right to enter the motel parking lot, I turned left into the mall parking lot. I was just pulling into a parking space off the street when I saw them leave her car and enter the motel lobby. A few minutes later, I watched them walk across the balcony on the 2nd floor and enter the room. It didn't take a rocket scientist to realize that they weren't studying literature there, more like anatomy. It wasn't until 2 hours later that I saw them leave the room. By this time, I had my digital camera ready. I always carry a camera with me because sometimes I need to take pictures of projects to document the issues being raised. I turned on the zoom lens to take detailed pictures. He kept his hand on her ass as they walked back to the lobby. This time I recognized the asshole. He was the star of the varsity football team. He was a senior this year, and scouts from all the NFL teams watched him every game. In most drafts, he was picked in the middle or late 1st round. Even the most critical analysts predicted that there was no way he would go further than the 2nd round. The guy was going to be an undeniable star in the NFL. I'm a bit of a football nut, so I like to follow the games and analyze them. It helps a lot during betting pools and betting on games. I win a lot more often than I lose. So screw it, that bitch is cheating on me. That's a total screw-up for me. We've had this discussion a couple times. Renounce all others means something to me. It's a vow to each other in front of God, family, and friends. That's the kind of vow that just can't be broken. Till death do you part. Okay, sure, there's a divorce. You don't want me anymore? Fine. If you're stupid enough to want to leave, I'm smart enough to let you. I already fought for you once. That's what dating and engagements are for. I won that fight when she said yes. I don't have to fight for her again. Okay. All the plans and decisions I had been mulling over had to change. I needed a whole new plan. I waited about 10 minutes after they left, started the car, and hit the road. I ended up at a sports bar, which was my original destination. I took my notepad with me and chose a booth in the back for some privacy. I ordered a burger, beer, and bourbon from the waitress, and then began formulating my plan. As I thought, I jotted down notes. There were 4 columns. What was likely to happen to me, what to do with my daughters, what to do with this whore, and what to do with this asshole. Me. Did it matter? Not particularly. There was one issue that made everything in this column moot. There was no way I could forgive and forget what my whore wife had done. There was no possible path to reconciliation. There was no future for my daughters either. Although I loved them with all my heart, I would never be invited to their college graduations. I would never walk them down the aisle at their weddings. I would never put their children on my lap. As for my daughters, I needed them to be taken care of. Of course, they were already adults and could take care of themselves. But I still wanted them to succeed. All that was left was to finish college. Then they needed to gain experience before they could take over the firm. I also had to make sure they had enough money to feed them until they were completely self-sufficient. If I could leave them something else to make their lives better, that would be a bonus. As for the whore wife, I gave her everything I had, and she repaid me in kind. Okay, she's not getting anything else from me. Asshole. He took away one of my most prized possessions. I will repay him by taking away his most valuable thing. Once the brainstorming was done, I began to put together a flowchart. For those unfamiliar with it, a flowchart is used in engineering to outline a path of decisions or events. It is an if/and/or type document. You start with the first step. This step has two outcomes. If yes, do this, or if no, do this. Things expand from there. The result of each step leads to the next step until the problem is solved. This can be used to logically solve almost any problem. It can also be used as a way to figure out possible problems and solve them in advance, and to anticipate possible obstacles in advance so that they can be addressed. 4 hours, 3 beers, and 2 double bourbons later, I had a plan ready to go. Unfortunately, 3 beers and 2 double bourbons later, I was in no condition to deal with this whore. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have done it, but I drove back to the office. I was far from intoxicated. I'd had 5 drinks in 4 hours, so I didn't feel that bad. Still, I was probably over the legal limit. At the office, I got a small room with a bed and a bathtub. It was handy for those long nights when I was under a deadline and had to work late into the night. I used it quite often, but it wasn't a regular occurrence. I sent the slut a quick message saying I was on a deadline, and there were some problems. I had planned to have a long night and just spend the night at the office. The next morning, I got up and continued with my plans. By noon, I had everything mapped out step by step. By the end of the day, I went over each step, detail by detail, and made changes when I found small flaws. I decided I had 30 days to get everything done before the last step. I stayed 2 hours later than usual, rearranging the steps to meet the deadline before heading home. By this time, I had enough control over my emotions to act normal. I had also figured out how to explain to my wife why I was so exhausted and what the doctor had said. Basically, I was going to tell her that age and overwork were starting to take their toll. He advised me to cut back a little on my workload and exercise more. I would never go near that cesspool again, but she didn't need to know that. I managed to have a normal evening at home. I didn't have to pretend to be tired. I really was tired. Kim tried to be affectionate, but I was too exhausted from the mental strain and restless sleep of the previous night. She asked about a project I was working on, and I told her some nonsense about an urgent project whose parameters had changed. She had never gotten into company business, so I could tell her anything and she would believe me. The next morning, I was up early. I had some appointments to make and people to talk to. I should probably mention that the business, like almost everything we owned, was in my name only. Yes, we opened the business after we got married, but the income and authority was in my name only. The business was in my name as the sole proprietor. Kim's name was not on any of the paperwork. As for our house, again, the title and mortgage were in my name. It was easier that way. Kim had no income, so it only lowered her credit score. It didn't matter at that point because we planned to spend the rest of our lives together. Even if something happened to me, Kim would be the heir. I even made a will stating that. By the end of the week, the new will was signed and notarized. I also hired a private investigator to follow my wife and gather more evidence of what she was doing. I had no doubts, but the girls would need more concrete evidence. That was the easiest step. Next would be a little more complicated and would require the help of not only lawyers, but businessmen as well. "Carly, how's my favorite sis doing today?" I said when she answered the phone. "I'm damn well better off being your favorite sister, since I'm the only sister you've got, asshole," she replied. "So, what do you want?" "What do I want?" "I'm deeply offended that you immediately assume I want something when I call you." "Yes, yes, yes, yes. When you start a conversation with that favorite, you always want something. What is it?" "Well, aside from your sarcastic remarks, I do want to see my favorite and most beautiful sister. It's been a while and I thought you might want me to buy you lunch tonight. Oh shit. This is worse than I thought. Favorite, beautiful, and you're buying. Wait until I look up at the sky and see if the four horsemen of the apocalypse are approaching. My sister and I got along great. We were pretty much all we had left after our parents died. She divorced her cheating husband about 5 years ago. She has since gone back to school and gotten her MBA. She now works as an account manager for a manufacturing firm in town. This was one of my clients. Truth be told, she was too smart for the position and only needed experience and time to become a VP. Had she gotten her MBA and started working for them right out of college, she might well have been a CEO by now. Instead, she'd married the jerk and fallen out of the labor force for a while. Seriously, Carr, I really need your help. I need to meet with you today. Take the entire afternoon off and meet me at Hammerhead's at 11 o'clock. My voice was desperate, and I'm sure she could hear the crack in it. Oh shit. It's bad, isn't it? It's worse than you can imagine. Please, Carr. Of course, big brother. I'll be there. Not only are you my big brother, but we both know I owe you everything for what you've done for me. You don't owe me anything, sis. I did what I did because you're my family. You needed help, and I just did what family does. Okay, then I'll do what family does this time. And I was sitting at the same table in the far corner when she walked in. The hostess pointed in my direction, and she came over and sat across from me. Do you have to come back today? I asked. No, you asked me to take the day off, so I did, she replied. Hearing this, I handed the waitress our order. I knew what she liked, so I just ordered for both of us. Bourbon at a time like this? Damn, this must be the apocalypse. Quite, I replied. Okay, Carly, here's the thing. You know I wanted you to come over to work for me. I understand that you want to be independent and earn your own money. You think working for your family is going to seem like nepotism. That's not true at all. You're very good at what you do, and you're underappreciated where you work. I really need you right now. Look, Dan, I appreciate your offer, I really do. But I'm not sure it's going to work. I know we get along great, but how will that change if you become my boss? I've heard horror stories about family members going to work for their relatives. Okay, Carr, I didn't mean for it to turn out this way, but I'm desperate. When I said I needed you to work at my company, it wasn't an exaggeration. I don't just need you to come work at my firm, I need you to take over as CEO. I need you to run the firm, at least until Gina and Sue are ready to take over. I need you to mentor them and prepare them for it. When they turn 30, you can start handing over responsibilities to them if you feel they are ready. Gina will likely take over as COO and Sue will become CEO. By then, you can retire or work as a consultant from time to time. Dan, you're starting to worry me. If I take over your firm and teach your daughters when they graduate, what will you do? I couldn't help but notice you left that part out. That's why I wanted you to just accept my offer. I didn't want to go into details right now. I was hoping I could tell you differently. And now I'm going to have to convince you of that. I sighed. Carly, a week ago I learned 2 things, both on the same day. No one else knows it, but I'm dying. I have pancreatic cancer. There's nothing they can do. I'll be lucky if I live another 6 months. It's probably 3 or 4 months. Things are going to go downhill fast. Also, Kim is cheating on me with at least one of the students at the college she teaches at. I'll set it up for the girls, and you'll be the trustee of the inheritance. Kim's not getting a damn thing. Everything is being set up in trusts that you will administer with the help of my attorney. I've already made a will that specifies that. I transferred ownership of the firm to an LLC with you, Gina and Sue as owners. I sold the house to the firm, so it is now owned by the LLC as well. I need you to notify me at work, and then start spending a few hours each evening and some time on weekends in my office for the next 2 weeks. We will use this time to get you up to speed so you can get started as soon as you leave your current job. I will still be assisting you for a week or 2, but no longer than that. We sat in silence for a while. She was trying to come to terms with what I had just told her, and I was waiting for her to digest it. The food arrived, and we ate in silence. As the waitress was collecting our empty plates, Carly asked me to bring her another shot of bourbon. "You're a bastard for putting me in this position," she said finally. "Of course I'm going to do it. You leave me no choice." "I know. I'm sorry. Believe me, I wish I didn't have to do this. There are a couple other things I'm going to need from you too, but we'll talk about that later." "I'm going to be mad about those other things?" she asked with a smile. "You have no idea," replied I. So we spent the rest of the day talking about the firm and what she needed to do to prepare. She wasn't an engineer, but her role was mostly on the business side of things. I informed her that I would be promoting one of my senior engineers to help her with that side of the case. We went back to my office where we started going over invoices and other information she would need. Before we went home, she used my computer to quickly write her resignation letter. By this point, things were starting to happen rapidly. Every day I felt myself becoming more and more exhausted. I spent long days in the office, handling firm business and tutoring Carly in the evenings. On weekends, we spent several hours in the office as well. Kim was starting to worry about how exhausted I was. I would come home, have a quick snack, and then pass out in bed. Kim tried to talk to me about the fact that I was working hard. I explained that I had some big time-consuming projects, but everything would be finished in about 2 more weeks. I told her that I was also making a few changes that would take most of the load off of me, but that I needed to make the time now so things would run smoothly later. She wasn't happy but seemed to understand. It was Friday. It was Kim's last day of work at her old job, and she would officially begin her duties on Monday. The private investigator had finished his work, and I was sitting in his office going over the results. She was indeed having an affair with a football player. 3 times a week they left campus and went to a motel. There are even photos and a short video shot through a curtain. There was no doubt what they were doing. I thanked him and paid the rest of the bill. He handed me the file and flash drive. Sunday evening, Carly and I finished up all the chores so she could get to work the next morning. It had been a long day, and I could feel it. I knew that I needed to finish all the chores this week before I was too far gone to do it. "Okay, Carly, we've discussed most of what I need from you. Starting at 7 tomorrow morning, you'll be in charge. We've met with the lawyer and accountant, and all the necessary signatures have been notarized. You're officially in charge of all trusts and LLCs. I'm not going to tell you when, where, or what, but I need you to bail me out when my lawyer calls you." Shit. You're going to do something stupid, aren't you? It's a matter of opinion, but maybe? Okay, but murderers don't make bail. No one's going to die. You don't have to worry about that. I want them to live and regret what they've done. Shit. So you don't want Kim to bail you out? Is it because you don't expect her to be able to do that? I'm not going to physically harm her, but I'm not sure she'll want to bail me out. Okay. Wednesday. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was sitting behind a large SUV next to the driver's side of my wife's car. It was parked in the motel parking lot. I could hear their conversation as they walked to the car. It must have been fast and furious. He was much larger than me. Plus, he had the strength and stamina of a high-level athlete. And there was also a slight problem with my strength and stamina, which I was deprived of due to illness. I heard him unlock the car by pushing the button. He laughed at what my wife said as he opened the passenger side door. I heard him open the driver's door and attacked. I was already swinging the bat when I suddenly whirled around to the back of the SUV. Kim's eyes widened at the sight of me. She didn't even have time to shout a warning before my bat came down with all its force on her right arm, which was resting on the roof of the car. A couple more blows. My whole body tensed, then convulsed, and then I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying face down on the pavement with my wrists cuffed behind my back. I realized my timing was bad. A patrol car was in the street next to us just as I began my assault. The cops saw me jump out of the back of the SUV and pounce on my wife's lover. They hit me with a stun gun to break the asshole's left elbow. When the ambulance arrived, 3 more patrol cars showed up. When I regained consciousness, they escorted me out and put me in the back seat of one of the cars. It was interesting to watch my hysterical wife give a very animated version of events to a rather attractive policewoman. Eventually, I was taken to the station and a report was made. Of course, I was sent to an interrogation room. They used the usual psychological tricks. Left me alone for an hour or two, good cop, bad cop, suggestion that everything would be okay if I just confessed, etc. Really? They needed a confession? Why? Unfortunately, these tricks only work on people who really care about what happens to them. I already knew what was going to happen. I was going to die, and not one damn thing was going to change that. The DA had a win-win case, and she knew it. She also had a huge backlog of cases as the Crown virus depleted the ranks of judges, jurors, and other support staff. Why waste time on that? The outcome of the case was a foregone conclusion. She made an offer. My lawyer presented it to me. I turned it down. Now we're back to the beginning of the story. Are you crazy? That was my attorney, Donald Jenkins. They literally have an airtight case. There are probably a dozen witnesses, including your wife, not to mention very clear video footage from not one, not two, but 3 separate security cameras, all in the goddamn daily. Your fingerprints and DNA were found on the weapon you used. Your motive is very well documented. And that's not to mention that the police caught you at the scene and their cameras showed you assaulting him. Yep. All very well said. I could see why he thought I might be crazy to turn down the plea bargain I was offered. I would plead guilty and get 5 years with probation for another 5 years, or I would be found guilty at trial, and the judge could sentence me to 15, 20 years. On the other hand, if I were a normal, reasonable person, I might not be in this situation. For one thing, it would have been better if I hadn't committed the crime, or if I had, I would have been a lot smarter and at least tried to cover my tracks. No. I did it, and I didn't care who found out about it. Listen, you hired me to represent and advise you. I'm telling you that you don't stand a chance in court. The DA is only offering this deal because there is a backlog of cases in court. By giving you this deal, you will be spared the unnecessary expense and time of a trial. My best advice is to take the deal. You will not walk away from it. No lawyer in the world can get you out of it. I can't even argue against it. If this goes to trial, all I can do is sit next to you and watch the prosecutor crucify you. I won't even have an argument to make. Once the prosecution settles down, I'll settle down too. I won't even be able to call a single witness to defend you. You're finished. The only thing you can do is to mitigate this disaster as much as possible by serving as little time as possible. Going to court will cost you a hell of a lot of money, only making things worse for yourself. So, counselor, when is the trial? How long will it last? And how long after that before sentencing? I asked. His eyes sort of glazed over as he tried to come to terms with the fact that I just didn't care. Because of the backlog in the case, the trial will be in about 6 months. Before that, there will be arraignment hearings, evidentiary hearings. I'll have motions to be heard. The prosecutor will file motions, and a few other things. All I can do is try to delay the trial, but that won't change anything. Fine. You need to call my sister and let her know what my bail will be. She'll bail me out. It won't be cheap. Not your problem. Also send her your bills. She'll take care of them. He walked away. I'm sure he was thinking about getting a psychiatric evaluation. Maybe he could get me an insanity defense. I was fine with that. I didn't mind paying him more money for doing the best he could, not that it mattered. Kim surprised me by coming to visit me. I was still in jail. I was scheduled for arraignment and bail was set. Carly was supposed to bail me out, but she was a little upset about the massacre. She would have bailed me out, but she wanted me to cool off for a couple days first. I'm sorry, she began. Okay. It really didn't mean anything to me. There was no romance, no feelings. It was just... Congratulations. I'm glad he was able to make you happy. She definitely wasn't happy now. She started sobbing, then abruptly stood up and ran out. Oh well. The next day I was released on bail. Carly picked me up and drove me back to the office. If you wanted to ruin his life, you succeeded. He will never play sports again. Not even for fun. His right arm is shattered. They expect him to only be able to use it 50% at best. Both knees are shattered. He'll be able to walk, but no more than that. His elbow will never be able to fully straighten out either. She said this after we sat down in her office. So I've succeeded. Why so much destruction? It's simple. He took one of my most prized possessions from me. I decided to repay him in kind. He took my wife from me. I took away his football game. An eye for an eye, future for future. You do realize they're going to sue, right? With who and for what? They're going to sue me? I'll be dead long before it goes to court. If they try to seize my property, they'll find I don't have any. All I have right now is a couple $1,000s to live on for a couple more months. They can sue all they want, but they will have nothing to recover. They can't go after the firm because I'm already out of the firm. They can't go after the girls because they're of age and independent. The only person they can go after is Kim, and I don't care about her at all. Besides, she doesn't have any money they can take either. Good. Now what's your plan? Simple. I'm going to die. I turned down the deal I was offered. It'll be a couple months before the case goes to trial, and by then, I won't be alive. You really need to talk to your daughters. They need to know, and they're really freaking out about what you've done. I was planning on doing it tonight. Actually, you can do it in a few minutes. They're on their way. I've reserved a conference room for you for the rest of the day. Half an hour later, I was sitting across from my two daughters at the conference room table. Daddy, what the hell? And what the hell was Mom doing there? Asked Gina. I slid the folder toward them. Your mom was there because they had just gotten out of the motel room they were partying in. He was your mom's lover. This file is from a private investigator I hired. Did you know he was a star football player in college and that he was supposed to be drafted in the first or second round? You ruined his career. Yeah, I knew that. I did it on purpose. He robbed me of the love of my life, so I robbed him of what he loves. But now he's going to sue you for everything you have, and you're going to go to jail for a long time. Neither of those things will happen. For one thing, I've made sure I have nothing to lose. I don't have any assets that anyone can take. I no longer own the firm. It's now owned by an LLC in Carly's and your name. All the money is in trust funds for the two of you. The house is actually in trust funds in your names. You own everything. Carly is the executor of the trust. Your mother doesn't have access to any of it. What you do for her is no longer my concern. Is there any chance you can reconcile before you go to jail? No chance, and I've already said I'm not going to jail. Dad, be honest. There's no way you won't be convicted. We've watched all the programs about this and reread all the articles. There's no way you're going to get away with what you did. I'm not getting away with it. I'm not even trying. My emotions had been bubbling from the moment my beautiful daughters walked into the room. Suddenly it came crashing down on me like a Mack truck. I won't be at their college graduations. I won't be walking them down the aisle at their wedding. I'll never get to hold my grandchildren in my arms. I sobbed. I felt two presences beside me, and they wrapped their arms around me. Oh my God, what's wrong, Daddy? Asked Susan. I'm dying, kids. I have a very scary cancer. At best, I have about 2 more months to live. But, they both wailed. I suddenly felt another person behind me wrap his arms around all three of us. I looked over and saw tears streaming down Carly's cheeks. The 4 of us sat like that, crying for a few more minutes until we could get our emotions under control. Finally, I guided the girls back to their chairs. As you can see, I will be gone long before the trial begins. Furthermore, I will be dead before the trial even begins. Once I'm gone, they won't be able to get anything from me. They got rid of everything I had long before the attack. They can't even take the house because I sold it to the LLC. The money from the sale went into a trust. That trust will be available to you when you turn 30. I don't have any assets. I cashed out all my investments and donated them to charity. Why didn't you tell us this before? Gina inquired. Asked Gina. I found out about a month ago. Right after I left the doctor's office, I saw your mother's car pull out of the university. Her lover was driving and she was sitting in the passenger seat. I followed them to the motel they arrived at. I saw them enter the room and then waited about 2 hours for them to leave. I was devastated. Not only had I just found out that I only had a few months to live, but I had also discovered that the love of my life was cheating on me. I spent the next 2 days planning what I was going to do, and here is the end result of that planning. We talked and cried together for another hour. Then it was time for business again. For that, I called Carly in. We discussed the firm's new organizational structure. When Gina graduates, she will start working with the engineers. She will be involved in all projects and attend management meetings. When she gets her PE license, she will be given her own projects to manage. In time, she will begin to help Carly run the company. It is anticipated that by the time she is 30 years old, Gina will be able to assume the position of Chief Operating Officer. As for Sue, she will become Carly's assistant after graduation. She will work side by side with Carly on the business side of the company. Sue will take over as CEO when she is ready. With Gina handling operations and Sue handling the business, things should work out well. Carly will also be willing to help advise and be the umpire between the two of them. A week went by. I was staying with my sister and hadn't spoken to Kim since she visited me in jail. I sat on the couch in Carly's living room. The bright light was shining on me, and a rather attractive red-headed girl was sitting across from me. Good morning. This is Amy Brown from KRAP News. I'm here with Dan Malloy, who has been charged with grievous bodily harm in the brutal attack on star receiver Jamal Washington. Mr. Malloy has graciously agreed to be interviewed. She started on the camera. Then she turned to me. Mr. Malloy, I'm actually surprised you're doing this interview. Aren't you concerned about the injunction the judge has placed on this case? I'm not bothered in the least. There's really not much he can do about it. By the time it's aired and he sees it, there's nothing he can do about it. But he can hold you in contempt and put you in jail. Well, I really despise the divorce laws in this country. Look at them. If her husband tries to divorce her, she gets the kids, the house, alimony, and maintenance. She usually gets most of the other assets as well. The poor bastard who married her ends up living in a cheap apartment, eating ramen, and paying most of his income for his ex-wife to have fun with her lovers. They reward cheaters and punish those who have done nothing wrong. Aren't you afraid you'll go to jail? Not at all. What about the long prison sentence you're facing? First of all, I have not been accused of anything. We always have the principle of innocent until proven guilty in this country. Yes, but you have to accept that there is an enormous amount of evidence collected against you. Yes, I am aware of that, and it doesn't bother me in the least. Good. I'm anxious to know why you're so sure of that, but what about Jamal's lawsuit against you? From what I understand, he's demanding over $40 million for lost income, pain, and suffering. Not to mention a lifetime of physical disability. Blood from a stone. That's not going to happen. I have nothing to take. I'm unemployed and homeless. I don't have any assets. But you have a successful engineering firm and a huge house. No, I don't. I sold the business and the house over a month ago. Everything I owned I put into trust funds to ensure my children would be taken care of if something happened to me. Everything was completely legal and ethical. All taxes were paid properly. I cashed in all my investments and gave everything to charity. I don't even have a paycheck to confiscate. Good. Let's get back to the assault. You never denied you did it, but you never said why. Why did you attack him, and why so brutally? It seems like you deliberately hit the spots that could have destroyed any chance of an NFL career. Oh, that was definitely my intention. If the police hadn't tasered me, I would have hit him a couple times. The attempted murder charge the prosecutor threw in was a joke. It was not my intention to kill him, and furthermore, I tried to avoid blows that would have killed him. If I had intended to do so, my first blow would have come on his head, not on his arm. So why did you attack him in the first place? Isn't it obvious? Where did the attack take place? In the motel parking lot. Who was with him? My wife. They were having an affair. They'd just left the room they'd been in for 2 hours. I figured if he could take away the most important thing in my life, my soulmate, then I'd take away the most important thing in his life, his football career. Making him impotent was just an added benefit. I see. You have certainly achieved your goal. What about your wife? After all, it takes two to tango. Do you plan to get back at her? I plan to, but I won't reveal it now. My revenge on her for cheating on me will be perfectly legal. She'll be hurt badly, of course, but she won't be able to do anything about it. In fact, what I have planned has already been done, but she doesn't know about it yet. When will she know? When this interview airs? Oh, back to your imminent jail time. It's not imminent. I still haven't been convicted in a court of law. Okay then. How about we get back to your likely conviction in jail time? Much better. So what makes you so sure you won't be convicted and sent to prison? Let me start by telling you about the events of one day a little over a month ago. I had been feeling very tired and broken for some time, so I went to the doctor to get checked out. About a week later, I went in to get the results. They were not very good. I had just left the doctor's office when I saw my wife's car pulling out of the campus. I thought that was odd, since Jamal was driving her car and Kim was in the passenger seat. I followed them to a motel and waited a few hours for them to get out. A couple things to note. Kim is a certified tutor for the university. In fact, she is part of the faculty. Even as a volunteer, she is still subject to faculty rules as far as dealing with students. As a tutor, she has authority over her students as one of their professors. I remember once on a trip to Cancun, I met a couple of female college professors. They were both single and looking for boyfriends for the week. As we were talking, I mentioned that I thought relationships between professors and students were illegal because the professors had power. So, back to your answer. After I saw what I did, I hired a private investigator to get hard evidence of what I saw. I also began taking steps to follow up on what the doctor told me. Initially, those measures were to include taking care of Kim. After what I saw, I just crossed that part of the plans out. Now everything I did was focused on taking care of my daughters. They were always going to eventually take over the business. I just formalized that. I also hired a really good businesswoman to act as CEO and prepare the girls to take over when they were ready. I also converted the company from a sole proprietorship to an LLC, as well as delegating authority in my own name. All the money I had was transferred to a trust fund for the girls that will be in someone else's name. I also transferred the title to my house into the trust as a gift to the girls. So I am not worried at all about possible charges because I will not be there for them. The doctor told me I have a very aggressive pancreatic cancer. It is not curable. At best, I have 2 months to live. More than likely, I will die within a month. My trial doesn't start until 3 months from now. What are they going to do? Put my corpse in a jail cell? As for my wife, I leave her with nothing. Perhaps our daughters will take pity on her and help her. That is no longer my concern. Also, the case of her affair with the student will be forwarded to the University Council as well as the relevant law enforcement agencies. I also have a copy for you if you would like one. I should inform you that copies will also be sent to all major news media outlets. You just ruined their lives. Don't you think that was a little over the top? Not at all. They ruined my life, or what was left of it. Imagine being given the worst possible news and all you wanted was to be comforted by your spouse. Instead, not half an hour later, you find out that your spouse is cheating on you. Yes, I'm going to die soon, but they robbed me of the opportunity to be comforted by my wife in my last days. They ruined the rest of my life, and I ruined theirs. At least they will be alive and can try to rebuild. Jamal. He's in college. He can use his degree and pursue another career. That's ridiculous. In case you didn't know, Jamal is far from a model student. In fact, the university has already started investigating him, and they've already found out that he only retains the right to play because he makes other tutors write essays and homework for him. He will most likely be expelled, and the credits he has already taken will be changed to non-credit if they find evidence of cheating. He won't get a degree, and he won't be accepted to any college in the country. Or maybe he'll at least set an example for all the other scumbags out there who are in the business of seducing married women. I shrugged. Okay, that's all the time we have. Thank you for agreeing to this interview. This is Amy Brown from KRAP News. Amy gathered her notes and stood up. She shook my hand and handed me a note before leaving. After she left, a stunning blonde walked into the room and sat down at the table. A few minutes later, she was ready and the dazzling lights came back on. This is Jessica Moore from Cunt News. I'm her... The judge was going to be seriously pissed when these interviews aired. I figured I'd better get it all done in one day before he had time to do anything about it. It was my last day of freedom anyway. It didn't really matter where I was tomorrow. If he wanted to put me in jail for contempt of court, it would cost him a pretty penny. My lawyer will take care of it. Well, that was the end of it. I packed the few things I could still use before my first interview. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. Early the next morning, Carly drove me to the hospice where I would stay until the end. Yes, the judge held me in contempt. He was about to send officers to send me to jail when my attorney and doctor informed him that, for health reasons, I needed to be placed in the infirmary. This would be expensive. They also informed him that they would be sure to mention it to the media. Instead, he ordered an ankle monitor to be put on me, so I wouldn't leave hospice care. I laughed. I had nowhere to go anyway. Carly and the girls visited me almost every day. I realized they couldn't always make it, but they were there for me when they could. Sometimes I was able to video chat with them. They kept me up to date on everything that was going on. Kim tried to visit me, but I forbade her from visiting me. She gave the girls letters to give to me. They handed them to me when they arrived, and after they left, I just threw them in the trash. I wasn't interested in anything she said. First, the prosecutor tried to move the trial date. My lawyer resisted. It soon became clear that it didn't matter. I wouldn't be able to attend anyway. Then my attorney began a public campaign that the DA was wasting money and resources by continuing a case in which the defendant would die before trial. Being smart, the DA quietly dropped the case. Yes, a lawsuit was filed. It involved both Kim and me. Since we were still married, she was to be responsible for my debts after I died. That made me laugh. Her lover entertained her one last time. My girls are here with me. And Carly, too. I'm so exhausted. I realize this is the end. I don't want to fight anymore. I have nothing left and no reason to continue. I see another person slowly enter my room. Kim. My wife. I haven't seen her since she visited me in jail right after my arrest. Yes, I asked her to come over. She nervously enters the room and sinks down next to the bed. I'm sorry, she says. I know. That asshole will undoubtedly try to take everything I own. As long as I have somewhere to live and something to live on, I'll be fine. I'm sorry I haven't been able to comfort you these past few months. It's all my fault. I'll have to live with that regret for the rest of my days. You did what you thought was right. You were rightfully angry. Please know this. I never stopped loving you. I will love you until the day I die. When that happens, we will meet again, and I will love you forever. You are my soulmate. I forgot about it for a while, but I'm back. I can see that you are already tired. Sleep, my love. Go in peace. We shall meet again. Daddy drifted into sleep. We all watched his breathing slowly slow down until it finally stopped. The beeping of the machines turned into one sound, and Daddy was gone. I'm Gina. The last conversation was written by me. I found Dad's notebook after they came and took his body. I read what he had written about the events of the last months of his life. After discussing it with Mom, Carly, and Sue, we decided that I should finish his story. Dad had prepaid for his funeral. He also had a funeral account set up in case Mom needed it. The plots were already purchased too. We decided to have a private ceremony. It was family only, but we agreed that 2 reporters could attend and videotape. We insisted that they not make a scene. It was great, and Amy and Jessica behaved very respectfully. I have to giggle a little because I later found out that Dad met with both reporters, separately, in a hotel room for one last fling before going into hospice care. Jamal did file a lawsuit against Dad's inheritance, though. As you already know, there was no inheritance. They tried to press the business and trust funds, but we were able to get those lawsuits dismissed. Dad had nothing to do with the firm at the time of the attack, and the trust funds were untouchable. Besides, Carly, Sue, and I weren't involved in anything. Things were not so rosy for Mom. She was foreclosed on to the tune of $20 million. Even though she didn't have anything they could collect, the judgment still remained. Sue and I hired my mom as a cook and housekeeper. She gets free room and board. We make sure she has enough money for the entertainment she needs. Everything is legal and by the book, at least as far as we've been able to prove it. His lawyers peek in from time to time. They don't get paid unless he collects money from them, and he doesn't have the money to pay them. It sucks to be them. Eventually, they'll get sick of it and give up. At least until the fact that Mom has tons of money becomes public knowledge. However, everything is kept secret on her behalf. She's suffered enough already. There's no point in making them worse. Mom doesn't date. She socializes with groups of her friends. Sometimes she doesn't come home until the next morning. None of them she has a serious relationship with. They are just friends of interest. She is determined that she will never have a serious relationship again. She will be single until she meets her daddy again. As for Jamal, he lives with his parents. His bedroom is on the 2nd floor because he doesn't know how to use the stairs. He was expelled from school, as expected, and he doesn't even want to think about applying to another school. He just sits around playing video games and waiting for the court to decide. This is probably why his parents tolerate him, although I hear they are getting tired of waiting. Perhaps soon Jamal will be faced with the choice of being evicted or starting to grow up. So that's the way things are at the moment. Sue and I have taken over the running of the firm, and Aunt Carly pops in from time to time to help out. She's retired and living the good life. She even takes my mom on a cruise a couple times a year. Sue has a steady boyfriend now, and things seem to be pretty serious. As for me, I haven't found a single guy who is anything like Mr. Right. There are, however, a few lovers who are Miss Right. One of them may be about to lose the last word on that title. Her name is Amy, and she works as a reporter for the local news. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.